How's it going, everyone, and welcome to my video. So this video, let me adjust my thing a little bit. Yeah, so this video is about this tournament I participated in recently. Well, as I'm recording, it's like a day or two, just the other day. So it was the 2022 online US Rapid Chess Collegiate Championship. I mean, there's like so many terms to put in, like you don't know like how exactly to order it. But yeah, it's like the online rapid championship for Collegiate. So that was super awkward, but we are going to move on. So yeah, it was online. It was on chess.com, 9 rounds, game 10 plus 5. And it was a little bit unusual because it was manually paired rather than like on a normal like chess.com tournament where you just enter one and then they just automatically pair you. They automatically matched you, but I thought it was going to be like maybe 3, 4, 5 hours at the most, the event. Turned out to be a 7-hour affair. So yeah, so I'm going to be dividing this video into 3 parts, which might spoil, it might spoil how I did. So first part, I did terrible. Second part, I started to gain my momentum. And then the third part will just be about, just like the final stretch, like how I did. So yeah, if you don't want spoilers, then don't look anything up. Although these results are online on my chess.com profile, so you can easily just figure that out. But yeah, with that said, I mean, I played a pretty good player in round 1, so I think we will go ahead and go over there. All right, let's go. So in round 1, I got this massive opportunity to play Grandmaster. Super Grandmaster might be generous, but very strong Grandmaster Grigory Oparin. And if you don't know who he is originally a Russian Grandmaster. A lot of players from Russia switch federations, and you can probably guess why. But anyway, he's from Russia. I believe he goes to Mizzou, like University of Missouri, or I don't know what the exact school is. Some chess powerhouse, something like that. And yeah, he's ranked like number 64 in the world, I believe. He's been as high as like 50-something, nearly 2,700 over the board. So as I mentioned, this was a massive opportunity. I would probably say, yeah, he's definitely going to be the strongest player I've played in a, at very least, semi-competitive tournament. Like, he's trying to win the whole thing. He was the number 1 seed. So, with that said, let's look at the game and see how I did. So, he played e4, I played e5, and he played the Ruy Lopez, I played a6, he played bishop a4, and I went knight f6. And this is the first sort of curveball that I was thrown. He played this move knight c3. Now, if someone like lower rated or around my level or even a little bit higher plays knight c3, I don't really care. But obviously, this is a very strong grandmaster playing knight c3 against me. So I'm like, wait, what's he up to? So the traditional way to handle this is just to castle and then play rook e1, protecting the pawn. I play b5, and then from here, it's a decision of, whether white wants to go into the marshal or not. So they could play c3, which allows d5, and that's the marshal gambit. It's its own thing. Or they could play an anti-marshal, and there are several anti-marshal moves, even d4, that they could play. But he doesn't go into any of this because he plays knight c3, which temporarily, now that's a key word, temporarily kind of, stops the move c3. But as we'll see later in the game, maybe that doesn't matter that much. So he played knight c3, and I realize that he is defending the pawn. And so if I just do something like bishop e7, I figured he might be able to take and then take on e5. Though maybe I just have something like, yeah, actually I can apparently play knight e4, and then if knight e4, just go queen d4. So I sacrifice my knight, but I get one of them back. So after knight c3, I mean, so as you can tell, I have no like theoretical knowledge here. I probably should develop some, but I just played b5 just to stop any bishop c6 nonsense, which is pretty thematic. Once they castle and play rook e1, you need to know b5. After b5, my opponent played bishop b3, and this is where I think I played a little bit of an overzealous move. Bishop e7 is totally fine here. Just go bishop e7 and castle. A lot of times, you don't really want to develop this bishop far out, like c5 or b4, because it can easily get attacked. Like when the knight's not in c3, white might have like c3, d4 ideas. However, I played this move bishop b4, and I think it sort of showed in the game why bishop b4 is somewhat inaccurate, because I sort of failed to estimate. Sorry, let me reword that. I underestimated, well, one, how much of a target this bishop could be, and I'll just show it with the moves. My opponent castled, I castled, and in this position, my opponent played knight d5, and I'm sort of starting to realize what he's up to. So he's not threatening my bishop, it's protected, but I don't really want him to necessarily take. So he has that idea, and also, like when I move my bishop, he has this move c3, and he's just going to go d4 and get a very good position. So let's back up a little bit. So when I played bishop b4, I didn't really think anything of it. My idea, now it's not an immediate threat, but I wanted to take the knight, then take e4. You know, that's sort of like what I had planned long term. I didn't do it immediately because I just was kind of scared of like the open e-file in some instances. It's generally better just to castle before going pawn grabbing in the center. Like I was thinking if I take and the knight takes, I didn't even have a specific variation. Computer saying like queen d5, which, you know, hits mate and also the knight, which I can defend with knight d6, but it's not very pleasant saying bishop g5. Yeah, white is sort of like pushing me around. Like I have to play f6 and like, or maybe not have to, but like it's all covered. Like it's just not a pleasant position. So yeah, that's why I didn't do it immediately. I castled, but when he played knight d5, it just sort of like threw me off. Computer says I can take the pawn, apparently, which seems risky. So after knight b4, my knights are sort of like misplaced. I just wasn't attracted to it, and they can just win the pawn back with knight e5. And, I mean, slightly better for white, probably better than what I, you know, ended up going for in the game. I mean, I have an open diagonal for my bishop, maybe some open space for my rook. I can still play d6 at the right time, reroute my knights if I need to. But, anywho, after knight d5, I didn't do that. I played the move bishop c5, and then he played c3. So, clearly, white gets what they want. So because I placed my bishop on b4, it sort of invites him to play like knight d5, c3, d4. Because if my bishop's on e7, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go knight d5. Although I guess he could, but I'm not even sure. Like, I'm not sure what the theoretical anecdotes are, but anyway, I decided to take the pawn. I was like, you know, he's sort of giving it. I didn't see like an immediate ramification to giving away the pawn. Note that now I am threatening f2. So, not threatening, but I have that eyed. So if he tries to play a move like rook e1, then I have bishop f2, and I fork the king and rook. However, he played this move d4, which opens the position while solidifying a pawn in the center. And so I took, he took back, and I played this move bishop e7. He played rook e1, attacking the knight and eyeing the bishop. I played knight f6, he played knight e7, I played knight e7, and here he played bishop g5. So if you look at the computer evaluation, it's actually not amazing for him. It's telling me right now plus 0.8, which is better for white. I think white got what they want, but given what I've sort of had to like give up and like the potential ideas my opponent has, one being to like take and double my pawns, you know, I think white got what they want. So apparently I'm supposed to just let this guy be, although I'm realizing, let this be. Although his secondary option here is knight f5, which protects the knight with the queen. So if they take, I take with the queen. Computer saying like queen d3, and I have to play either like d5, d6, which protects, or like h6, which counterattacks the bishop. Still a very flimsy position, but there are also some lines where like I don't even have to like, you know, worry about this. Like computer was saying d5, which I think positionally makes a lot of sense because it's blocking the bishop from any attack. But I was just worried like they would just take and double my pawns. And not only are my pawns doubled, but my king is weak, which I would argue is even more important. However, if they play a move like knight h4 trying to get the queen in, I can always just play knight g6. And okay, it's still like slightly better for white, but it's like, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I guess like white, you know, it probably would have been better. I mean, well, I'm saying that because the computer says it, but anyway, I played knight c6, which is a mistake because my opponent gets to kick me around with d5. I thought that knight a5 was like, you know, somewhat decent, but it just turns out They play bishop c2. My knight is just left to dry. You know, there's this pin going on. But even more importantly, queen d3 is coming with a checkmate threat. Well, they would take the knight first, obviously. The order they would go is queen d3, I do something, and then they take the knight. Queen takes, and then they would get checkmate most likely. And so I realized that and realized that, like, I'm probably just losing in this position. So I just played h6. He retreated, and I was like, I knew that the ensuing sacrifice was coming. I played g5 and he just took it. I was just like, I didn't see anything better. Computer says I should go knight c4. Oh yeah, I remember analyzing this. Knight c4, and if queen d3, there's this move knight b2. So I'm tempoing the queen, and they can't really, like... I guess if they go queen f5 to try to stay on the diagonal, I have d6. You know, I didn't really think that far in advance, but I played g5, and he just immediately sacked. Bishop takes. And I'm just dead lost here. Because the thing that's powerful about this sacrifice is that I only have my queen, and maybe in some instances my king defending the knight. If I ever try to move my queen away, well, shoot, there isn't really anywhere I can move the queen. But let's say I just try and move it away to, like, break the pin. Then they just take the knight. And meanwhile, they can just attack the knight, like, further. And I just have nothing I can do. So you'll sort of see it. I played king g7, he played rook e3, and I was like, oh, snap. They're going to go, like, rook f3 and, like, attack the knight. But no, he didn't even do that. He went rook g3. He's not attacking my knight. He's going after my king. And here I was just like, I actually slipped. I guess I clicked the wrong piece. I was going to play rook g8, which is still just dead lost. But I accidentally played knight g8, and, like, it gives up the queen. I'm sure there's a faster mate. I just resigned after playing knight g8. But honestly, it's a pretty terrible position, you know, just if you look at it. So, yeah, not a great start, but we did play the best player in the field, and on to round 2. All right, friends, welcome to round 2. So I was paired against someone who's almost 1900 rapid, so a little bit lower rated than me, but also I should be able to win or at least draw this game. So I'm actually going to skip through the opening. I basically got this Catalan structure that I like against the Slav, and I'm just going to skip through it. I don't think it's the most important phase of the game. There were some more critical moments that happened a little bit later in the game. I played this move f3 to sort of chip away at their center, and they took it, and I took back with the rook. And after bishop e7, this is actually a moment where I'm actually completely winning if I find a certain move and the proper follow-up. So why don't you take a second, pause the video, and what do you think the best sequence of moves is in this position? All right, so if you need more time or just don't want me to keep awkwardly, you know, just staring at you, then, if you need more time, feel free to pause the video, but if you just want to see what the answer is, so in the game, I played bishop takes f6, which is not the best move. I simply played bishop takes f6 because I didn't want to allow them to ever play knight e4 in the future. It would be like, you know, a nice outposted knight protected by a pawn. However, I have this move g4. g4 is so poisonous because I have the idea to play rook h3. Now my rook and my queen are both eyeing the h7 square. And then, you know, I have bishop takes f6 to remove that knight, and it's just very crushing. And there's not much that my opponent can do to, like, stop it. I mean, just note, like, the piece activity. All my pieces are way more active than theirs. Like, it's just, like, not a fair fight. And, like, you know, if they play h6, then, like, their light squares are going to be extremely weak. So, like, what do? I mean, computer says best defense is queen e8. I would play rook h3 anyway, and then just play g6 and just, like, kind of hang on. Then I have bishop h6, which I guess for all intents and purposes wins an exchange because the rook is out of squares. Rook f7, I just take. So g4 would have been very savage. I didn't play that. I played bishop takes f6, and then, you know, I continued to apply the pressure with bishop h3 and doubling my rooks on the f-file. And then here I made a mistake with e4. Now, what I would say about e4 is it's more of a miscalculation, if anything. Because I evaluated that if they take either pawn, if they take C or E, then I can just recapture with my queen and I'm doing completely fine. And I thought, oh, if they take my knight, I just take back and I'm doing totally fine. Well, as it turns out, I didn't properly calculate, because after bishop e5, d5, he has this move queen c5 check, and he's forking my king and my pawn. And I was like, oops. And so after king g2, he just played rook f3 and then won the pawn. However, there was a better way I could have handled it. I actually could have played queen f2, which gives me a better version of what happened, because after queen f2, first of all, if he takes, I would just take the rook, and that would just be checkmate. That's pretty simple. This could have happened. He could have made all these exchanges, and then he could have taken the pawn. The difference between this variation and what happened in the game, which is this variation, in the actual game, my rook's on f3. So if I want to do anything on the d file to where, he has a bishop, which is protecting a pawn, like, it would just be, it would be nice if I could attack on the d file. But I have to take 2 moves to get there. Whereas in the variation, I can actually just go there in 1 move. I play rook d2 and suddenly I'm attacking the bishop. And even if they protect the bishop or something, I can play like rook d6 and go after the e pawn. And for example, if he plays rook d8, I have this move bishop takes e6, exploiting this pin. And so, yeah, apparently bishop c8 is the best move, but then I get rook d8, and it's just sort of a mess. I mean, computer says it's equal. Let's see, king f7 and the line. Oh, I have a lot of moves that just equalize. But yeah, and if he ever approaches my rook, I can just go back. And like ultimately, he's just stuck. And I would say, let's say I just play like king f2 or something. b6. I'm thinking about b6 trying to go here. I probably have time. Let's say I go king e3, bishop. Oh, if he goes there, I have check. So he can't even do that. He would have to like, move his king off of that, but then I have bishop e6. So ultimately, that would have been a better version, but I went down a pawn. I played rook f2 and then rook d2, just trying to like get my counterplay anyway. Then I played rook d4, trying to go after the c pawn. My opponent played king e7, which gives up the pawn, but allows him to kind of overtake the d file. I do think that's smart, but it wasn't necessary. He honestly could have just played b5, protecting the pawn, and then, just did whatever he wanted to do. But anyway, he gave up the pawn. He's still better because of the open d file, but I was able to play like king f4, and I think for the most part, I have a defense going for me, because I have this move bishop g2. Now my pawn is sufficiently protected, and, I still have a worse position, but it's sort of hard for black to break through. And I wasn't even sure what rook c8 was. I think he wanted to support c5, but I just thought, sweet, I get the open d file, And then he trades rooks, and we just sort of get this endgame. And this is the moment where I let the game slip away from me. If you look at it on the computer, it still says that black is slightly better. But I believe if I play this move a4, which stops a b5 break, I should be able to draw. And if he tries a6 to go b5 anyway, I just play a5 myself. So the idea is that b5 gets met with en passant. And, okay, ultimately, if I played a4, then I'm still probably the one struggling, because I have the doubled e-pawns, my bishop's pretty bad, he has a bishop targeting one of my pawns, but it probably would have been a draw. However, I played b4, which is a mistake, because he has this move b5, and then here I thought he should have played c4. I thought c4, the computer says it's drawn. I thought that was going to be what he played just to give himself a passed pawn, but he took, and then he played king b6. And then you realize that, like, his majority on the queen side means something. Like, that's going to be a problem for me. So I played bishop h3, just like kind of scrambled around a little bit. I don't want to keep this video too long, so I'm just trying to, like, just breeze through the game. And in this position, I made a fatal error. I played the move king e3, which loses because he basically just has a4 and, like, just bring the king in or something. b3, he just, like, he gets what he wants. So I can draw, or maybe not draw. Computer says 0-0. Who knows? But apparently bishop c4 is just equal. if he goes back, then I'm just going to go bishop back to b3, and he's not really making much progress. And though I guess, what if he plays a4? Then I just like play bishop d1, and like apparently this is drawn, but I'd have to like work it out. And like, I mean, I'm trying not to spit too many computer variations in this analysis, but after bishop c4, what I was worried about is king a4, just trying to go in and then just continue with the expansion. And apparently, this is so fascinating. Apparently, I'm winning in this position. I'm winning if I play the move king c5. And I think the idea is that's nearly a zugzwang. It's a zugzwang because, like, okay, all of these guys are frozen. And I was thinking, you know, he has this move g4, but I play king b6. And then suddenly, black is just out of moves. If king a3, I take a5, that's good for me. If b3, I just take it. That's also fine for me. If he plays bishop e8, I take the e6 pawn, and that's completely winning. And if bishop c8, I just have king c7, and the bishop is trapped. So that would have been very fascinating. Although, you know, if I play bishop c4 check, he doesn't have to play king a4. I was sort of expecting that, but that would have been fascinating. It didn't register to me during the game that king c5 is completely winning, but anyway, very interesting stuff. I played king e3, and then ultimately, I just lose the race because a4, bishop d1, he goes king c4, and then b3, I try king g4, and like, if I sack on b3, maybe this gives me better chances, but he can play a move like bishop c6, attacking my pawn, and if takes, and honestly, as long as he can defend that pawn and prevent me from, like, you know, queening immediately, he's going to be completely winning. So, for example, king f4, I believe, yeah, bishop f5, and if g4, he can even play bishop d3, and, like, he's eyeing the pawn. He's eyeing my pawn's path, and, like, in the meantime, he can go over and win the pawn himself, or at the very least, like, you know, just sort of opposition me out of the defense of the pawn, and it's completely winning. And so, yeah, he played b2. I thought I was, like, maybe going to play, like, bishop c2, defend, and then, like, you know, be able to take and advance. But as it turns out, he just goes in with the king, takes the pawn, and then takes this pawn. And I'm like, oh, shoot, there's, like, literally nothing I can do. Because, like, if I exchange, my pawn is just way too slow. And so I just played g5, hoping that he might, like, conveniently forget about this. But he just took it and then, like, made a queen. And I just resigned here. So very interesting game. Unfortunate to fall to 0-2, but, you know, we're going to try to bounce back, and on to round 3. All right, guys, now this was round 3 of the tournament. At this point, I'm 0-2. I'm playing someone a bit lower rated, and we're just looking for a spark at this point. So, yeah, so once again, my opponent played the Slav. At the time, yeah, someone else had already played the Slav. I think in this tournament, I faced, like, 3 or 4 Slavs or something crazy like that. They played bishop g4. I played this move knight e5, just attacking the bishop. And in this position, I was just kind of like, I don't know what I was thinking. I just went g4. Now, the way I played, I would not play this at home. Here was my justification. I thought, you know, fine. You know, he played bishop e4, attacking my rook. I was going to go f3. He goes back. My thought was I was just going to play h4, go after his bishop, and if he plays like h6 to give his bishop an escape, I just take. And then I ruin his pawn structure, just split his pawns, his king side's going to be weak, and so I just thought that was good. But as it turns out, after f3, I just completely misevaluated, or not even that, I just missed that he can just take on b1. So that's what he did. Now, normally you don't want to just trade your developed bishop for an undeveloped knight. I've seen that before. It's actually not good positionally. However, here, it's worth it because I've weakened myself so much. I have all these pawns on light squares. My dark squares are weak. Now, Stockfish is still going to say I'm better, probably just because I have a good space advantage, and black has no development. However, it was just kind of a stressful position to play. Here I played queen b3, attacking the b7 pawn and also eyeing this. My opponent took on e5, I recaptured, he played queen c7, and I don't know what was going through me here. I just played bishop f4 here, but I believe I can just win a pawn here. Right, if he takes here, I just, like, take or even take b7. And, I mean, I don't know. I do not know what I missed there. Actually, I was analyzing this, like, or I tried a previous recording and, like, I just, like, had to cut it out. But, you know, I just didn't notice that pawn hanging. I mean, not sure. I mean, I think it was just, like, tunnel vision, like, he played queen c7, attacking the pawn. I'm going to play bishop f4, defending the pawn, and also x-raying. But, you know, we miss stuff. It's part of life. So he played e6, then I took, and I played bishop g3 in this position. Why did I take? That actually is a great question. Yeah, so this was the justification. So I thought if e takes, I had the potential for this to open up. So I like the future possibility of just going e6, opening up my bishop. Obviously, if I go e6 now, he just takes it, which is why I played bishop g3, to protect my bishop. And then e6 is a possibility later. And I also saw if he takes with the c pawn, then I have this move rook c1. I just attack the queen. I even have probably ideas of queen b5 check and maybe like e4 and get the bishop in. You know, it's pretty good for me. So, yeah, after e takes d5, I played this move bishop g3, queen a5 check, king f2. Yeah, so, I mean, backing up a little bit, I saw this idea of, like, queen a5 check, and I could just try to trade queens and just, like, you know, just play that position. However, I was just like, my king's actually relatively safe on f2. You know, queen c5, I just have king g2, and he doesn't really have a way to attack my king. I think my biggest problem is just my development. Like, my bishop's not getting out. And if my bishop just doesn't get out, then neither will my rook. And that didn't happen for the rest of the game. So my opponent played queen b4, offering a queen trade, and I considered accepting it, just taking and playing like a3. He just drops it back somewhere and playing b4, just kind of playing this minority attack, and also just have this grip on the c5 square. But I just decided the queen looked a little bit silly on b4. I'm just going to play queen d3 and then just attack it later. He played knight e7, and then here, queen b6, I played b4, rook d8, bishop f2, queen to c7, and we repeated a little bit, and in this position, I ultimately played b5, which is what I played, and yeah, I just had some commentary for it. It's not the best move. I thought there was like a concrete reason, but I mean, computer's telling me like f4, or like just go back, bishop g3 or something like that, but I played b5. There's clearly some analysis I'm missing, but I'm just trying to skip through this because at this point, the video is probably over 30 minutes long. So he played knight g6. I played bishop g3. It was kind of funny because, like, I was about to, like, take or just do something like that. And I was like, oh, shoot. He has knight f4 as a threat. So Scott's got to always watch out for those fork threats. And just, like, checks in general. You want to make sure you just keep an eye out for them. So I played bishop g3, which covers knight f4. He played bishop c5, and in this position, I decided to go e6. e6 in itself is not brilliant, because after knight f4, I take and then take queen takes. I mean, I just thought this transformation might be good for me, but ultimately, his position is just very solid. I played queen c3 attacking the bishop. He just went queen e7 protecting. I exchanged. I played rook c1 attacking the bishop. He took on a3, I took on c6 with check. So he was attacking my rook, but I get to attack his king in return. And after queen d7, I realized there was just like nothing better. I mean, I kind of misplayed the game. It's going to be opposite color bishop end game. So I took, he played rook takes. If he had played king takes, I believe I was just going to go rook a1 and then just attack the bishop and go after the pawn. Though he could play bishop c5, but you know, maybe I get some counterplay with like e4 and then get the bishop in. Maybe that would have been more challenging on his end, but we just repeated here. And I mean, like, computer's saying, like, if anything, I'm slightly better, which I think is kind of weird because, like, what's all of this? I guess the argument is that black has more weaknesses than I do, but ultimately, I mean, was this a good result? No. Is this a spark? Absolutely not, but at this point, I'm half out of 3. At least I got something on the scoreboard. And this will be it for the video. So as I said in the intro, I'm dividing this probably into 3 parts. First part is like terrible start. Second part is like, getting my momentum back, hopefully, just a little spoiler. And last part will probably be, about like just closing out, just like the final stretch and how I did. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. And I think with that said, I will let you guys go. Just feel free to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you for the next one.